Welcome to the Passback. I am your host, Jackson Moss, alongside
Cade Young.
This is a podcast where we're going to be talking about pretty much everything A&M football. Just a little background on each of us. I'm from North Dallas. I'm currently a communication major, class of 2024, down here at College Station. Cade, tell them a little bit about you.
I'm class of 2025. I'm a junior from San Antonio. I'm a communications major as well, and I love sports media, so this is right up my alley.
We decided to kind of start this podcast just because we all both had an interest in talking about A&M football and kind of A&M sports, and we definitely have an interesting season coming up and probably one of the more hopeful seasons coming up. A lot of interesting things happening in SEC West play that we're going to dive into, but I think first we wanted to start off with a couple things from last week's game against Arkansas, which, by the way, that was probably the least stressful game I've ever watched in AT&T Stadium in the past 12 years.
Oh, what a game.
So, yeah, no, I was happy to make it. Watching our offense and defense kind of work together finally and not having to rely on one to win that game was very nice. But our defense coming through, especially in more games earlier this season, has been something that's been a little bit more refreshing to watch. But you have a few things on I think we're going to do player of the week first here and then get into this first segment.
Yeah, so I think for offense, it was Anaya Smith for sure. His scrimmage yards, he was the leading receiver, and he had an 82-yard punt return touchdown.
Yeah. No, all-purpose yards were definitely very important in picking Anaya Smith for offensive player of the week. I think, year in and year out, we've seen him come in to the offensive role in a very special way, not to mention a few punt returns along the way. He's been crucial for this offense, and I think he's one of our more reliable guys on our offensive side.
He's he reminds me of Speedy Noel and Christian Kirk.
Yeah. No, Speedy Noel, man. I forgot about that. That's been a name I haven't heard in a couple of years.
He was crazy.
He was. It's definitely interesting because we actually have a pretty, good set of wide receivers this year, and I think that's something we've been looking for a while now.
Yeah.
And Christian Kirk was a great example. I mean, always being able to go to him, and now we have guys like Evan Stewart, and Moose is getting a few touches here and there, but Noah Thomas is coming in to be play a big role and be a big factor in our offense. But Anais has always been just someone we can go to, and it was funny because we started him out at the the running back position, and we ended up moving him over to the slot receiver, which I think personally ended up being the best for him.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he was competing for reps with, I believe it was A-Chain and Spiller at the time, and we had a three-headed monster pretty much at running back for a little bit there, but. No, it's really good to see him actually work into that role of a slot receiver, and having him obviously healthy was a big thing this year. Injuries have kind of plagued us in the past for a little bit.
The last time he was healthy, we beat Bama.
That's right. Yeah, no, and he that season was a really big season for him, and I had a lot of hope for him last season, unfortunately, but I think it was the Southwest Classic where he actually got injured. But no, it's good to see him finally working back in. I'm happy that we could choose him for Player of the Week this week. But flipping it over to the defensive side of things, another guy that's really coming up big and kind of finding his identity on the defense, Chris Russell. We saw a little bit of him last year and maybe a little bit the year before, a few plays, but Chris Russell has been, I think, absolutely stellar on the defensive side of things. And honestly, I think, in my opinion, one of the best outside linebackers in the country right now.
It was really hard to pick that one because they had 15 tackles for loss. That's the fourth time it's happened in 20 years.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Football game.
That's right. We have what's interesting is we have a lot of pressure on the edge, and not just only talking about the defensive line, but for once we have a little bit of pressure coming from our linebackers, and I think that's honestly set us up a lot for success.
Yeah.
I think one of the statistics was that we were stacking 6 in the box 75% of the time against Arkansas, which is crazy if you think about it for past defenses, or for one of our past defenses last year. Like, I feel like, Durkin was still kind of figuring stuff out, and, everyone was a little bit shaky and kind of wondering what he was going to do with our defenses. But it's good to see him incorporating the 4-3 and the 3-4, kind of moving around and mixing it up instead of just going straight 3-4.
With our front seven, we can run. Like, he likes to run the 3-3-5 with just rushing 3, and we can get home with 3 and 4 rushers, which is huge against Bama because their O-line has not looked great.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to get into a little bit more of the matchup against Bama here later on in the show. But I think this is a good segue over into our next segment, which is going to be just really recapping last week's game against Arkansas. If you want to tell me a little bit about Max Johnson and how he's been performing and filling that spot for Wigman.
He came in great. Like, his first 2 possessions against Auburn coming in for Wayman, it was 2 back-to-back touchdowns, which shout out to Jake Johnson. First touchdown for his brother. That was cool.
Yeah. But saying Johnson & Johnson, the company. That's awesome.
But he looked real good. I didn't love the turnovers this week, but those were just at the end of the game, like, we were already up. It wasn't a huge deal, but he looks pretty good. I think he's more experienced than Wayman, so he has, like, more decisive.
Yeah. Something to remember is that I think it was last time we were at Death Valley, Max Johnson was the one who actually beat us.
Yeah.
And I forget the score of that game. It came down to the last play, and it was kind of like a walk-off touchdown, but Max Johnson, a lot of people forget, is actually a sophomore. So we're not done seeing Max Johnson. And honestly, if he keeps playing like this, I could see him getting pretty comfortable in the starting position as quarterback.
Yeah.
And you guys are probably going to hate me for that. And there's going to be a lot of people out there that are questioning that. But, I mean, Wigman's great. I love Wigman. I'm a very big Wigman supporter. But, I mean, when you're putting up numbers like Max Johnson is right now, and you're able to pass the ball, which we haven't done in, I couldn't even tell you how many years, I could see him getting very comfortable in that position. And going back to last week's game, it was honestly incredible to watch. Minus the second half turnovers, the opening pick 6 in the third quarter opening play.
It looked like he just threw like a halfback toss to the defensive back.
Yeah, no, it was not the best pass, but I mean, honestly, looking back at that play, it was a great read.
It was a great read.
He came off and picked up the screen. He saw it coming. But avoiding turnovers is going to be big. But I mean, I think he certainly has the arm. Looking back at Auburn, that pass to Eastu, that was, I don't even know how many yards, but it was right.
That was a perfect
right
pass
in his hands
in between two defenders.
Yeah, in between 2 defenders. I mean, he's throwing with confidence. This team believes in him. The coaching staff certainly believes in him. And I think we are in one of the best positions in the country to have a second-string quarterback starting at our offense and commanding stuff on our offense.
I agree, especially because this is his 4th year. He may be like a sophomore, but
that's right.
He has a lot of experience.
Yeah, and third down conversions are also something that's going to be very important for us going into the future, also especially this week against Bama.
Yeah. They didn't do bad. They were 8 for 15 third down this week.
Yeah, no, not bad at all. And I think looking at some of the play calling from Bobby Petrino has been very big on third and shorts, especially third and goals. This past week, we saw Crownover get into the end zone on what we thought was going to be. I think we were in I formation, and I think everyone in the stadium thought it was going to be a run. Crownover runs out to the outside and ends up being like 1 or 2 yard touchdown pass.
That was a great play call.
Great play call. I do still miss, however, the Jalen Weidermeyer special where he blocks for a little bit off the edge and then cuts back and across the field.
Yeah.
And I think it was actually Max that was throwing that to him. Like last year against South Carolina, it could have been Haynes. Haynes got injured so much it feels like you never know when he was playing. But throwing that back to him, that was always a great play call, and I kind of hope we start bringing that back. But something that, speaking of tight ends, that people keep forgetting about is that we're still missing Donovan Green.
Oh, yeah. Donovan
Green is probably going to be one of the biggest weapons on our offense.
Absolutely.
And him alongside Eastu and Noah Thomas, and now even Ja'Day Walker coming in and filling in that new spot for – actually, I think it's him and Moose that are competing for reps right now. Ja'Day Walker's been great. Had a few drops last week against Arkansas, which, everyone's going to have a bad game now and then. But
he had a few drops against, like, ULM too, but when he was stepping up for Evan Stewart being injured in that one game, he looked real great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he came into the season very explosive as well. I think he was one of our bigger targets for the first few games. But yeah, no, I mean, like I said before, our wide receiving core is just it's impressive to say the least. I would argue that it's one of the best in the nation.
Yeah, it is.
I can't wait for Donovan Green. I think he's out with the ACL for this season, but next season I can't wait to see what he does, and we'll have him for a little bit hopefully. And he looks like another Jalen Watermeyer, if not a little bit better.
He does.
Dare I say that? Because everyone loves Jalen Watermeyer, but
even like if we could really incorporate Jake Johnson, it'd be great. Because like you saw how we were with Watermeyer, and then Jay Sternberger.
Yeah,
Sternberger, he was All-American.
A lot of people forget about Sternberger too.
Oh yeah. He was a backup on the Packers. I don't know where he is now.
Yeah, but speaking of health, Evan Stewart, man.
Oh,
that's something we're gonna have to watch out for because it's been rocky so far for him. He got I think he was injured the first part of the season, and then he also got injured last week, and it just seems like a struggle. And obviously, that's like I was saying, that's someone that we really want to keep in on offense and get as much play time as possible.
Yeah.
But if Evan Stewart can stay healthy, I think that's going to be huge for offense. I have a weird feeling this weekend. I'm predicting it now that Evan Stewart's going to probably go over 100, 125 yards against Bama. I think for whatever reason he's going to tear up their secondaries.
I like it.
And we're going to have to utilize him. But the biggest matchup that we're going to be talking about this week is going to have to be our offensive line against the Alabama defensive line.
Oh, easily.
And then on the other side of the ball, our defensive line versus Alabama's offensive line.
Yeah.
I think it is two offensive lines that are in a really weird place right now, trying to figure out who they are and what their identity is. And I think we got two talented defensive lines and defenses going against each other. This game is going to come down to just pretty much smash mouth football. It's going to be war in the trenches, who can get in the backfield faster, who can create more pressures, and who can handle the pressures as better than the other one. Between Max Johnson and Jalen Milroe.
The offensive line looked night and day better than they did even against like ULM.
That's right. Yeah.
And they were playing Arkansas, which an SEC school, if you can dominate, it's a big deal.
That's absolutely right. And one thing I would say that is a little bit in Alabama's favor as far as pressure on the quarterback is Jalen Milroe's feet.
Absolutely.
Being able to get out of the pocket. Max Johnson by no means is slow, but being able to get out of the pocket and scrambling is a little bit more Jalen Milroe's forte. It's going to be interesting seeing Edge and Terry York running QB contain or QB spy, and how many times Durkin implements that into the defensive scheme. But I think that's going to be the story of third down conversions and big 20-yard plus plays. And
right.
What I don't want to see and what I'm worried about is a lot of busted plays. We get pressure on the quarterback. He almost gets sacked. We miss a tackle, and then he breaks it out for a 20-yard plus rush. And I think we're gonna have to keep a guy home. I think we're gonna have to contain him, and if we're gonna get in the backfield, we have to sack him. We cannot miss our sacks.
It really will come down to like containing him. Like they have to fill every rush lane every single play.
Absolutely.
Because if we force him to throw deep, he's just not going to do it. He won't have time with our pressure.
Absolutely. Finishing up kind of on last week's game, talking about now the defense and how they performed. Excuse me. The secondaries, I think, are the biggest question mark on this A&M defense.
It is.
Josh DeBerry.
I don't know how to feel about him.
I love Josh DeBerry, but there's a few plays where he gets burnt. There's a few plays where he's letting up first downs, and he's still a very big question mark. It's going to be interesting to see who we bring in to fill his spot if we do start subbing him out. I saw last week we brought in Dalton Brooks, true freshman out of Shiner, Texas.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see where he's going to be playing. It looked like he was in the secondaries from what I was watching at the stadium, but it was kind of hard to tell.
I like Jacoby Matthews and
Jacoby Matthews, Bryce Anderson both have very big upsides. Especially Bryce, I think he's coming on very big right now. as far as secondaries, like I said, it's going to be a big question. I think it's how they want to play is going to be, and like their mentality going into the game is going to be the story of the game. We got to stop getting burnt, and we got to stop letting up first downs when we shouldn't, or third down conversions. But as far as our defensive line, we're kind of talking about them a little bit already. I mean, just 5 stars everywhere.
Oh,
5 stars everywhere. I mean, there's
probably the most talented front seven in the nation.
It's got to be the most talented front seven. And, I mean, you're looking at guys. I mean, we're probably 3 deep in each position, you know, just with 5-star talent, which is what some teams are just begging for right now and just wishing to have. And, I mean, looking at total defense, the NCAA now has us ranked at number 5. I thought Bama was going to be higher than us, but they actually have them ranked at 18 right now.
Really?
Yeah. So it looks like we're allowing about 253 yards per game, just about, and they have about 10 touchdowns let up this season. And I'm sure the Miami game is a big part to blame for that. Talk about a completely different game or a completely different team since that game.
Absolutely.
Let's see. I think we have 20 sacks on the season right now. 7 last week and 7 the week before.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable if you think about it. I think the last team to do that was Auburn in 2004, where, you know, a team has back-to-back 7 sacks or more in a game, which is just unbelievable. But as far as the defensive line, there's not really many worries. A few people are going to be wondering about the 3-4 to the 4-3 scheme and how many times Durkin's going to implement it. I think we will see a lot more of the 4-3 just to get a little bit more pressure on Milroe so he doesn't get out of the pocket. It's all going to be keeping our guys rested and making sure we don't get tired. And we're going to have to come out and punch them in the mouth on offense and then rely on our defense to hold them and wrap up the game.
I hate to use UT as an example, but seeing how physical and aggressive they were, that's how you beat Bama this year, especially with the trenches.
Absolutely. You know, UT just came out and they played hard football. It's like I said, as much as I hate to say it, I hate UT as much as any other Aggie, but no, they out physical them, which is crazy when you think about Alabama.
Yeah.
And who they are and who they've been as under the Nick Saban era. But
this is the best. I think this is the first year in the Saban era that A&M has more talent than Bama does. Yeah,
no, for sure. And I think when we play more physical, a few problems start to kind of go away, such as converting more turnovers.
Yeah.
I think that's been a big problem. Everyone knows it. We're one of the last teams in the FBS in converting turnovers, and turnovers are one of the most important things about winning football games.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of arm tackling that I've been watching, and we've been getting kind of sloppy. You know, we're not really going for the football. You see some other teams, they're punching the football, they're putting helmets to the football, and that's that's obviously gonna cause fumbles, and it's gonna break up passes and plays and allow for interceptions. And
I do think that, like, obviously you can't really say much after 15 tackles for loss and 7 sacks, but I see the D-line a lot. Like, one guy will get home and they'll stop the play, but they won't tackle them. Like, they'll have to have someone else come in.
Yeah.
And if we could have that first guy do it every time, it would be huge, especially for Milroe.
I mean, turnovers are going to be also one of the more important things in this game against Bama coming up.
Yeah, we will not win the game with a negative turnover differential.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. And I think, like I was saying before, our points allowed per game were not bad. I don't think this is going to be necessarily a high scoring game. I haven't checked the spread. I want to say it was at 54.5 or something like that, over under. So I think the spread was -2.5 Bama.
Yeah, it was. They're favored by a field goal.
So it's something 27, 24, 27, 21 or something like that could be a possibility. I don't think it'll go into the 30s.
I don't either.
No, it'll definitely be interesting. It's going to come down to a few things that we just talked about, just turnovers,
right.
Our defensive line really stepping up as they've been the whole season, and if secondaries have a good game, I don't see why we don't win this on the side of the defense.
Yeah, especially if we don't even include the secondary. If
Yeah.
we can just keep them contained and keep the pass rush going, we don't need to. Because our 30-plus plays against us, we saw how Miami did that, and it was great scheming, great throws by Van Dyke, but
absolutely. But so this weekend's going to be very interesting because we have a few important games coming up for the SEC West.
Right.
We're going to have Missouri and LSU coming up, and I think the West, everyone could agree, is going to be decided this week.
Yeah.
Specifically based off Alabama A&M. A&M wins. They're obviously the number one in the West. A&M loses. Alabama's obviously the number one in the West.
Mm-hmm.
But an interesting game that I'm really wanting to watch is Kentucky and Georgia.
It would be a great game.
That's going to tell a lot about the SEC as a whole.
Georgia's look real shaky.
Yeah, they have. South Carolina and Auburn, going into that, no one thought that Georgia was going to have a problem with them. And it was a lot closer than I think Georgia fans were anticipating and that they were bargaining for.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I think, not as big after the Auburn game, but still a pretty big question mark at quarterback. A lot of guys are, talking about what's going on as far as QB depth over there.
He's thrown for 1,500 yards, which is crazy because they just don't put up points.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the big story here is going to be the rush game for Kentucky.
Absolutely.
I mean, looking back at last week's game, it was something like 17 for 279 yards rushing. And he had the third most in Kentucky school history in a game. So it's going to be, I think that will also be a war in the trenches, Georgia's defense versus Kentucky's running game. Vanderbilt and Florida, not really that big of a deciding game.
No.
Arkansas, Ole Miss. So although Arkansas looked like probably, and there's no way to sugarcoat it, one of the worst teams in the SEC and possibly the FBS last week against us. I'm hesitant to say that they still might have a chance against Ole Miss. Ole Miss looked amazing against LSU, but also we got to remember that LSU's defense is also one of the worst in the FBS, if not I think it's third to last almost in the FBS. So I think we find out who Ole Miss is this week. I think if they don't blow them out, it's a little bit closer. It's a little bit more, we're feeling better going into Ole Miss later on this season.
I don't mean to dive too deep into it, but I think obviously there's a few trap games and we don't need to be thinking about playoffs. But if A&M beats Alabama, I think their toughest test left is Ole Miss because Jackson Dart it just depends on the day. He'll look amazing, and then he won't. So I think that is our biggest game left after Bama.
Absolutely, and honestly, some people will be arguing that this game is going to be more interesting than A&M and Bama, Ole Miss versus A&M.
Yeah,
and we're going to be at Vaught Hemingway. It's not going to be home. We have kind of a poor record against them at their home stadium, but no, I think that's probably our biggest test after Bama, without a doubt. I'm not as worried about LSU right now just because of their defense.
I'm not either.
They have one of the better offenses in the entire FBS with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. He's going to be a whole nother conversation that we'll have to have later on in the season.
Right.
But yeah, no. So there's a lot up for grabs this week. I think Missouri is very capable of beating LSU, and if they beat LSU, I think that's the nail in the coffin for any LSU SEC championship hopes, if it's not already out the window.
Right. Because they have to win out.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, I think there's no undefeated teams left in the West, and we're now talking. Not only are we talking about who could be a one-loss team getting into the playoffs or the SEC championship, it could get to the point, based on what happens, who is a two-loss team that could be getting into the SEC championship. In which case, we start looking at LSU, and if they went out and, God forbid everyone else loses, could be an interesting conversation we're going to have about the SEC championship.
It's really unprecedented because the SEC does not feel like the SEC this year.
I think it hasn't for the past couple of years.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I think this year is more entertaining and more fun to watch as an A&M fan, and some other teams that necessarily hasn't been that fun to watch, like South Carolina. That's another story in itself.
Oh, yeah.
That will be a whole conversation we'll have also later on. Spencer Rattler, if he's real, if he's legit. Tennessee is not going to be an easy game for us going into Neyland Stadium.
No.
It was Joe Milton. I'm hoping, we figure out our secondaries at that point or by then. And same with Will Rogers. Air raid offense, man. That's like been our kryptonite for the longest time, is an air raid offense.
Absolutely. Our pass defense actually looks pretty decent.
Yeah.
But it's partly because of how much pressure we get.
Absolutely. So moving on to our next segment. So we're going to also be covering on this podcast, we'll do a little talk about Midnight Yell, kind of the lifestyle. That's one of the things we kind of wanted to talk about. With us being students here at A&M, I know a lot of viewers are going to be wanting to know what the vibe, the culture is like here on campus and what it's like being a student. But talking about the fans in AT&T this last week, man, this has got to be, maybe behind Bama, one of the chippiest games of the year always.
Mm-hmm.
No disrespect to Arkansas fans before we talk about this, but there's always been a little trash talk every year. Yeah. For those of you that are not watching the video, he just did the woo pig. But no, there's always been a little bit of trash talk, and it's always been a little chippy. But surprisingly this year, and it's probably because we were whooping up on them, there wasn't as much trash talk.
No.
And luckily, by the end of the third quarter, I didn't have to even talk to any Arkansas fans because they all just left the stadium. And I think that was hilarious. I took some videos. I saw it on Barstool, Texas A&M. Pretty much the whole stadium was just leaving after, we had them there for a second. It was just enough to give them hope, the opening pick six.
Yeah.
And then right after that, we just kind of kept our foot on the pedal. And I think that was also, I forgot to talk about it earlier, but I think that's a huge thing is not giving teams momentum like that. It's so hard to throw a pick six and get down on yourself. But to be able to answer back every drive and to be able to go out there and just say, you know what, I'm fine, especially from Max being a second string.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Let's move on to the next one. And, play after play, we're just going to throw the ball, and we're going to go down and score again. And I think that comes down to maturity. I think it's something that we're going to see in Connor a lot next year. Not that he's been bad on interceptions or turnovers, but I think he's going to really grow into his role, and I think this season is going to give him a lot of confidence as well. But
I think Jimbo gets a lot of criticism, but he makes sure his team doesn't just get down on themselves.
That's right.
You'll see one drive they get scored on, and then they just come right back and score again.
That's right. And Durkin's also very good about that.
Yes.
Bringing energy to the sidelines. That's why I was actually very excited when we hired him. I wouldn't say very excited. Very excited. It's like kind of a loose term because there's always mystery about how he's going to be as a DC. But
right.
Seeing him getting fired up on the Ole Miss sidelines before he came to A&M was also that's something you want to see from a defense coordinator. Those guys feed off that energy always.
Yeah. Especially, did you see the interview with McKinley Jackson?
I didn't.
He said that their defense is a brotherhood, and they all believe, even the young guys buy into the mentor relationship, and they don't have to. A lot of young guys can just be I'm talented enough, I'm a 5-star, I can just come in here and do what I do. But the defensive coordinator Durkin and the players, they all believe in the same culture, same system.
Yeah, and I think that's also partially responsible for the late Terry Price. Rest in peace, Terry Price. He was honestly one of our best coaches that we had on the staff. He cared about the team, and he was just kind of like a family member to that team. But going back to the Arkansas fans at AT&T Stadium, it was a great game, honestly. There wasn't too many bad interactions, which is a first for me out of my 3 years that I've gone as a student. So it wasn't too bad. So
they are my favorite to banter with.
They are, yeah. No, I mean, what I will say though is something about Arkansas fans is they're very loyal fans.
They
are. I can respect that. It kind of contradicts what I just said about them leaving in third quarter because I was shocked when everyone was leaving that early. But no, it's a great fan base. I always love, arguing with them in the games. So it's always a good time. Makes it fun. That's what rivalries are for. So
they won't stop. Like, they'll just keep going at it, even though they've lost 11 out of 12 times.
Even after 11 of 12 losses, yeah. But there was. I don't think there was any Midnight Yell this week. I don't know. I need to be better actually about going to Midnight Yell.
I do too.
I think we're going to do probably a few more, clips and videos at the Midnight Yell, and we'll probably implement them into the podcast in the future.
Yes.
But so moving on, we kind of previewed it already a little bit, but the upcoming game this week. Let's go ahead and jump into who's going to be our trending player of the week, someone who's going to be important and who's going to be vital for A&M's success. I think we both agreed that it was kind of an obvious pick this week. Maybe not obvious. It was a little bit between two players, but we ended up going with Edgerrin Cooper, number 45 on defense. I don't know if you saw his picture or on Twitter that he posted after the Hogs game. It was like click 45, and he had a dead hog, and he's a big hog hunter. I know that. I see him post all the time, but yeah, no. So we kind of talked about it already, but that contain QB spy pressure coming in up the middle on the blitzes is going to be huge. I'm very excited and interested kind of to see how Durkin implements the blitz packages like he did last week. I think we saw a lot more pressure coming off the edge. I know Edge got in there for a few sacks himself, but I think he's a physical player. I think he is the closest thing to that Alabama-esque linebacker that you've seen in the past few years.
Absolutely.
I think he fills up the hole. He fills it with purpose, and he's always played physical, always. That's one thing I've always liked about him is even when he was a freshman, he comes on the field and he is not afraid to hit you in the mouth. And I think he's one of our more talented guys on defense. And I think him versus Alabama's run game, and especially Jalen Milroe breaking out of the pocket and going and scrambling is going to be huge. I think he's going to be one of our most vital roles on defense this week.
Not to say that he's as good, but he kind of reminds me of Will Anderson in like the way that.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but dare I compare him to Will Anderson? Will Anderson was a beast, man. He was a stud.
Oh yeah, I mean Edgerrin Cooper won't be a top 10 NFL pick.
Yeah.
Just because he's.
He
could, but Will Anderson's a different breed.
Yeah, he is.
Edgerrin Cooper is that type of guy that Bama has to practice this week and kind of implement him as like the guy that they use in
what?
Scout team.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they're gonna use Edgerrin Cooper as like the main person to go around in scout team for reads, especially for Milroe and the read option game.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think read option is going to be a very big thing that they practiced playing against this week during their practices. But yeah, no, QB contain is going to be huge, and I think edge leading that is going to be very, very, very vital for our success.
Yeah.
And I think that's about all we have for this week. I think we're going to close it out here with a couple picks coming up from this, just around the football world, and have some predictions. So do you want to go ahead and start off on your picks for this week?
Yeah, so I think it's not necessarily an upset, especially because Missouri is undefeated, but I think Missouri beats LSU by 2 scores. I know that's kind of a crazy thing to say, but I just think that Braden Cook's actually look pretty good.
Yeah.
And they will exploit that LSU defense. There's many holes in it. And it's in Missouri, so I think they have a real good shot to beat them by 2 scores. Yeah. I do think A&M beats Bama.
Yeah.
By a touchdown, dare I say.
I'll go ahead and I'll give you my Missouri LSU one as well. We'll kind of go back and forth here, but I think I also have Missouri beating LSU. I don't know, two scores is.
I know,
but
it's bold.
It's bold only because of their offense.
Yeah.
And I think their offense it's going to be a shootout. I haven't checked the over-under, but it's got to be upwards of – I think I did check it. It might have been over-under 65.5. So I think –
They might as well put it at 70.
I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I checked. No, yeah, Missouri, I think I'll take them on this one. I'll take them probably by maybe a touchdown and a field goal at most.
Yeah.
But, no, yeah, I think their offense is great. I think they're they finally figured it out. And, talk about someone who else was, or Drinkowitz, who was also kind of on the hot seat coming into the season. I think Missouri fans were kind of wondering what was going on, and now they're ranked 21. So
yeah,
they're
it's a great thing for Missouri.
One of the only 3 SEC teams left undefeated: Georgia, Kentucky, Missouri. So
I know no one expected it except Missouri fans.
Yeah, for sure. So good for Missouri. I got them this week as well.
I know the Tigers will win that game.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the Tigers.
Yeah, for sure. They got to. Mississippi State, Western Michigan, kind of a cupcake game. Obviously, Mississippi State could be an upset. Who knows? And then Vanderbilt, Florida. So, dare I say, kind of the Super Bowl of losers here.
It absolutely is.
I just don't see Vanderbilt winning.
No.
I think Florida's too good for them, and Florida's not that great. But Vanderbilt's going to be Vanderbilt, and always last in the SEC. So I think that's probably who I'm going with. Is Florida.
Yeah, Vanderbilt. I'm not picking Vanderbilt.
There's no way.
They didn't look very good against Hawaii.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah, it's Florida, but.
All right, Arkansas, Ole Miss. I think I'm going to go with the upset alert here and take Arkansas.
You think so?
Unfortunately, after beating the crap out of them last week, I'm somehow going to take them in an upset. I don't know, man. I don't know. I might have to go with my gut here and switch it to Ole Miss. No, I'm sticking with it. Arkansas.
I like
Arkansas to win.
The gumption.
Yeah, Arkansas to win. I'm sticking with it. What about you?
I'm gonna say Ole Miss. I think Arkansas is a lot better than they played against A&M.
Yeah.
But our defense, man, limiting Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson to 39 yards on 42 attempts.
Yeah.
Insane. That won't happen again.
Yeah.
But I think Ole Miss wins.
KJ's the reason that
6.
KJ's the reason I didn't want to bet on Arkansas after watching them play last week, but
yeah,
I'll make it interesting. We'll pick one each and we'll see who wins. And then obviously Kentucky Georgia is the story of the SEC, as well as Alabama A&M.
Yes.
Kentucky Georgia. I said it earlier in this podcast. I'm going to go with Kentucky upset. I'm going to say Kentucky wins by a field goal.
I like the call. I don't want to pick Georgia just because I don't want them to win, so I'm going to say Kentucky as well.
Okay.
And I'll say Kentucky by a field goal because Georgia's going to make it a one-score game. They always do.
You heard it here. The pass-back spread has it at -2.5 Kentucky.
Yep.
All right, so Alabama A&M. I think this is the one that everyone kind of wants to hear about. Obviously, we talked about it a little bit, but I think we're very, very capable. And I'm just going to give you a spoiler alert. We're never going to pick against A&M here.
No.
But I think we are very capable of beating Alabama this week. Yeah. It's all going to be about how we want to come out and play and how this team wants to play. We have the talent. It's all a matter of if the guys believe in themselves to beat Alabama. Being at home is going to be a big factor. Mark my words, we will have record attendance in this game as well. It will break the record. I'm guessing somewhere from 111,000 to 112,000 for this game.
Well, what happened the last time a backup quarterback played in Kyle Field?
That's right. That's what they're saying.
Against Bama.
Zach Calzada, man. Something about playing against Alabama at home. It's unfortunately not a night game, because they never want to give us a night game anymore, even though we're 4-1, which makes no sense. I mean, this should be a primetime game, but it is a primetime game, but you know what I'm saying.
It should have been 6:30.
Yeah. But we're on CBS, so we're going to have to deal with Gary Danielson. I know a lot of people don't have some mixed opinions on Gary Danielson, including myself, but
I wish that Gus Johnson did SEC and not just Big Ten games.
Yeah.
Because I love Gus Johnson.
Absolutely.
You got barbecue back there?
That's right. But so I'm taking A&M. I think it will be actually by a touchdown. I'll say A&M wins the game 28-21.
I say A&M 27-24.
All right. Winning by a field goal. Well, I think we kind of covered everything we want to talk about. We're going to be posting on Spotify, YouTube. I think we're going to do some clips on TikTok. We'll have our socials up after this week. But, yeah, this is pretty much going to wrap up the first official episode of the Passback here with Jackson Moss.
Cade Young. Thank you for watching.
Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next week.